On this Sunday, there is a need to point out that on this day 57 years ago, on June 28, 1969, a significant, world-changing event happened that most of us know very little about. Before naming the event, there's a need to provide some context. The 1960s and earlier decades were not exactly welcoming times for gay, lesbian, and transgender Americans. The event in question took place in New York, but could as easily happen anywhere else in the United States, to the extent that same-sex relationships were illegal everywhere. In many big cities like New York, though gay and lesbian individuals flocked to gay bars and clubs as places of refuge, places where they could express themselves openly and socialize without worry. I'm going to back up here. Places where they could express themselves openly and socialize without worry were few and far between. However, the New York State Liquor Authority penalized and shut down establishments that served alcohol to known or suspected gay patrons, arguing that their mere gathering was disorderly. In 1966, an organization dedicated to gay rights staged a sit-in, where they openly declared their sexuality at New York City taverns, daring staff to turn them away and suing establishments who did. Their strategy worked. In 1967, a ruling from New York's highest court affirmed gay individuals had the right to be served at bars. Police raids were temporarily reduced after the lawsuit, but engaging in gay behavior in public, such as holding hands, kissing, or dancing with someone of the same sex, that was still illegal, so police harassment of gay bars continued. The Stonewall Inn was registered as a type of private bottle bar, okay? And we had these in Wisconsin. A bottle bar was a bar which did not require a liquor license because the patrons were supposed to bring in their own liquor. Club attendees had to sign their names in a book upon entry to maintain the club's false exclusivity. It quickly became an important Greenwich Village institution. It was large and relatively cheap to enter. It welcomed drag queens who received a better reception at other gay bars and clubs. It was a nightly home for many runaways and homeless gay youths who panhandled or shoplifted to afford the entry fee. And it was one of the few, if not the only gay bars left that allowed dancing. Police raids were still a fact of life, but usually a corrupt police officer would tip the bar off before the raid happened. This allowed the owners to stash any alcohol sold without liquor license and hide other illegal activities. In fact, the New York Police Department had stormed Stonewall Inn just a few days before the riot-inducing raid without much reaction. When police raided Stonewall Inn on the morning of June 28, 1969, it came as a surprise. The bar hadn't been tipped off this time. Armed with a warrant, the police officers entered the club and they roughed up the patrons and arrested 13 people after finding bootlegged alcohol. Among those detained were employees and people violating the state's vagrancy disguise law. Now, this was a law that went back to 1845. It was a statute that didn't mention gendered dressing. New York City police had long used this old, outdated code to penalize cross-dressers. At Stonewall, female officers took suspected cross-dressing patrons into the bathroom to check which sex they were. Now, the patrons were fed up with this constant police harassment and social discrimination. Angry patrons and neighborhood residents hung around outside of the bar instead of leaving. The crowd became increasingly agitated as events unfolded, and people were aggressively manhandled by the police. At one point, an officer hit a woman over the head as he forced her into the police van. She shouted to onlookers to act, inciting the crowd to begin throwing pennies, bottles, cobblestones, and other objects at the police. Within minutes, a full-blown riot involving hundreds of people began. The police, a few prisoners, and a writer with the Village Voice, a Greenwich Village newspaper, barricaded themselves in the Stonewall Inn. A fire was even started with the building. Now the fire department arrived, and a riot squad as well, and eventually they were able to put out the flames and rescue the people stuck inside Stonewall, and the crowd was dispersed. But the protests, sometimes involving thousands of people, continued in the area for 5 more days. Flaring up at one point after the Village Voice published its account that the writer who had been stuck in the Stonewall Inn had wrote. When it was done, 13 people had been arrested, 4 police officers had been injured, there were no deaths attributed directly to the rioting. The incident didn't become significant due to the violence or the lack of deadly force. Stonewall Inn was an event that could be pointed to as an event that said, enough is enough. It was a galvanizing force for modern LGBTQ+ political activism. Within a year, thousands of gay rights organizations formed. On the 1-year anniversary of the riots, on June 28, 1970, a couple thousand people marched in the streets of Manhattan from the Stonewall Inn to Central Park, in what was then called the Christopher Street Liberation Day March. Now we know that event as the New York City Pride March. The parade's official chant was, "Say it loud, gay is proud." Stonewall inspired similar marches in Chicago. And Chicago held their first gay pride parade on June 27, 1970. That's the day before the march in New York. San Francisco and Los Angeles also saw marches. Activists in other cities across the nation and the world began organizing their own pride parades after that. Over time, other gay pride events were planned throughout the month of June. In 1999, President Bill Clinton declared the month of June as Gay and Lesbian Pride Month, formalizing a tradition that activists and community members have been honoring for decades. Numerous songs and musical compositions were written about the 1969 Stonewall riots. One notable example was a contemporary symphonic work entitled Mother of a Revolution. It was composed by Omar Thomas. The Mother of the Revolution is a concert band piece with no lyrics. It was commissioned to honor the life and legacy of transgender activist Marsha P. Johnson, who had been present at the 1969 world-changing Stonewall Inn event. As a trans woman of color, she was emboldened by Stonewall to be a leader in later protests. 50 years after the Stonewall riots, the New York Police Department Commissioner James O'Neill apologized for the raid. What happened should not have happened, O'Neill said in June of 2019. The actions taken by the New York Police Department were wrong, plain and simple. The actions and laws were discriminatory and oppressive, and for that, I apologize. So that's the saga of the Stonewall Inn and its ongoing reach into the future. Back in 1969, the resistance led to change an outlook towards the violence and lack of deadly violence. Stonewall Inn was an event that could be pointed to as in, reading along, that's why it doesn't go, I'm reading back the page. So the resistance led to a change in outlook and support for the LGBTQ community, and it continues today. Okay, so that ends the history lesson. And in this next part, we'll see how much we've learned. Let's fast forward to the year 2026. And let's fast forward to a town many of us have been in and know where it's at, Watertown, Wisconsin. High school band director, Reed Ledoux, followed the school district's controversial issues policy. He sent a note home to parents in October of 2025, letting the parents know months in advance that his band class would be studying and preparing that symphonic piece, A Mother of a Revolution, that was written by Omar Thomas that I mentioned earlier. They would be performing it at their spring 2026 concert. The band director wrote the parents the purpose behind studying A Mother of a Revolution is not to provoke controversy, but to deepen the students' understanding of how music reflects the diverse experiences of humanity. Engaging with this piece, he continued, helps foster empathy, cultural awareness, and respect for the stories and struggles that shape our shared history. He was giving parents the opportunity that if they had issues with the piece, they could opt their child out of the concert, and 3 families did so. At the time, the school board didn't object. The Watertown High School band practiced the music for 5 months. Just 6 days before the spring concert, the Watertown School Board banned A Mother of a Revolution from the high school spring concert. They were saying it violated the school district's controversial issues policy. In a statement, the school board later said its responsibility is to provide students with a values-neutral education. The decision was not unanimous, with a vote of 7-1. The school board president, Lori Hoffman, voted against the song being performed, saying that this is a perfect example of what everyone here ran on, which was ending indoctrination and radical curriculum. The day after the school board's decision, hundreds of students walked out of the high school, protesting the board's decision. Many protest signs had been prepared to voice their objections. Such signs read, "Let the music speak," "Tells history, don't silence it," or "Support students, not censorship." Despite the protests, the spring concert took place the following Tuesday, with another piece of music taking the place of A Mother of a Revolution. But the story doesn't end there. Many Wisconsinites took action on the news of the Watertown School Board decision. And I'm happy to say the local ELCA church in Watertown, Emmanuel Evangelical Lutheran Church, Pastor Karina Schultz told Wisconsin Today that her congregation is openly welcoming and affirming of LGBTQ plus people. Emmanuel Lutheran would fill its sanctuary with sound, celebration, and optimism the following Wednesday night, the night after the spring concert, on May 20th, 2026. They were hosting current and former Watertown band students and community members, and they would perform A Mother of a Revolution. The composer, Omar Thomas, even traveled from Texas, I believe, all the way to Wisconsin to be part of the event. He stood before the musicians to conduct this composition that inspired so much controversy in the Watertown community. At the church that Wednesday, hundreds of people showed up for the performance, lining up around the block to get into the church. An overflow crowd listened outside under windows. And online, more than 3,000 people joined to watch the performance on a live stream. Before the performance, Omar Thomas went outside to greet the people that couldn't get in. He's quoted as saying, "It's my honor to be here today. Thank you for pulling up outside. It's kind of chilly, but it means more than I can express. And you're setting an example for people all over the country." It's in the common storytelling that we fill in the gaps of humanity, Omar Thomas said before conducting the piece. We start to learn about one another. We start to see all the ways in which we intersect. And then all of our differences become places of fascination rather than points of fear. Empathy is not a given. Empathy is a muscle that we all have, but like any other muscle, people have to choose to use it. A Watertown clarinet player, Casey Tripp, said she feels lucky to get a chance to perform the music she had worked on so hard, and to have Thomas there to lead. Honestly, I'm really happy to be part of this, Tripp said. All of our hard work paid off in the end. Kent Jacobson, a retired Watertown middle and elementary school principal, was one of the community members who attended the performance. He said he worked for more than 25 years to teach children to accept everyone and to be kind. That is what we taught for all those years. And then to have this happen just didn't make any sense to me, Jacobson said. I feel like a lot of hard work has taken a step back, and I'm hoping we can take a step forward tonight. There's been an outpouring of gratitude and excitement and joy, Pastor Schultz said. And we hope that this evening is one of connection and community and appreciating the musicality of this piece and the hard work that the performers and musicians have done to prepare for the evening's performance. One of the protest signs hit home with me. The sign was directed at the school board, and it read, "How heavy is your hate?" That is a question we all should be asking ourselves. How heavy is the hate we carry at times? It is the golden rule that frees us of this burden. All we have to do is follow it.